It ended. You may not have felt it end the way you expected endings to feel. You may have been waiting for something more dramatic, a moment of obvious closure. A sign clear enough that even the part of you that specializes in doubt could not argue with it. A turning so visible that the years before it would be unmistakably separated from whatever comes after. You were waiting for the kind of ending that announces itself. What happened instead was quieter than that and more complete than that, and in the long view of your life, far more significant than any dramatic announcement would have been. God ended your pain, in the particular way that God ends things, not with ceremony but with finality, not with explanation but with the simple, total, irreversible fact of the ending. The way night ends when morning arrives, without negotiation, without the darkness being given a chance to argue its case. What was present is no longer present. What was operating is no longer operating. The architecture of what was hurting you has been dismantled at a level you cannot yet fully see from where you are standing, but that you can feel in the particular quality of the air around your life right now. Something lifted. Something that was constant became absent. Something that was pressing became still. You have been in pain for longer than you should have been. This is not an accusation. There is no version of this that is your fault in any meaningful sense. It is simply the truth of what happened, named clearly so that the ending can be received with the full weight that it deserves. The pain was real. It was sustained. It had a texture and a persistence that wore on you in ways that the people around you could not always see, and that you sometimes could not fully admit even to yourself. Because admitting the full extent of it would have required also admitting how long you had been carrying it and how much it had cost and how different the shape of your life might have been if it had not been there. You carried it for a long time, and now it is over. The pain was not interference. This is the hardest thing to hold and the most important thing to hold, and the thing that, once it is genuinely held, changes the entire meaning of every difficult chapter of your life from the beginning. The pain was the work. It was doing something in you that could only be done through that specific form and that specific duration and that specific quality of sustained pressure. It was building something, refining something, removing something, creating the conditions for something that could not have been created in comfortable conditions. That required exactly the interior environment that the pain produced, the stripping away of what was not essential, the forced return to what was most real, the long schooling in what you are actually made of when everything that is not actually you has been taken away. Every tradition that has ever understood anything real about the interior life of a human being has known this. The mystics called it the dark night of the soul. The alchemists called it the nigredo, the blackening, the dissolution of what was impure before the gold could emerge. The psychologists call it the crucible. Every framework that has tried to map the territory of genuine human transformation has arrived at the same recognition: the transformation that matters. The transformation that produces something real and lasting and incapable of being taken away, does not happen in ease. It happens in exactly the kind of sustained difficulty that you have been living through. This was not random suffering. It was not the universe's indifference to you or God's absence from your situation, or evidence of some cosmic imbalance between what you deserved and what you received. It was specific, targeted, calibrated to the exact dimensions of what needed to be removed and what needed to be built and what needed to be refined in you before you could be what you are becoming. The pain knew what it was doing even when you did not. The pain was more intelligent than the explanation you were given for it. The pain was the curriculum and you were the student, and the lesson was the most important one your life will ever contain. And God ended it when the lesson was complete, when what the pain was building had been built, when the refinement had reached the point it was designed to reach. When what needed to be removed had been removed and what needed to emerge had emerged, and the continued presence of the pain would no longer serve the purpose it was serving, would, in fact, begin to work against what it had been building, by adding weight to something that was now meant to rise. There was a specific thing the pain was removing. It is worth naming because the naming completes the removal in a way that simply feeling the removal does not. The naming makes it conscious, makes it something you can look at directly and recognize and release completely rather than something that simply diminishes and fades and leaves you uncertain about whether it is actually gone or only temporarily quiet. What the pain was removing was the version of you that could survive in conditions that were not designed for your actual life. This sounds abstract, but it is the most concrete and consequential thing that happened in you during the years of the pain. Human beings are extraordinarily adaptable. Under sustained pressure, under conditions that do not match what the interior of a person actually requires, a person builds a version of themselves capable of functioning within those conditions, capable of tolerating what should not be tolerated, capable of receiving what should not be accepted, capable of existing in circumstances that the truest and most essential part of them knows are wrong without being destroyed by the knowledge that they are wrong. You built this version through the years when the conditions of your life were pressing on you in ways that did not match what you were, through the relationships and the circumstances and the recurring experiences that required you to be somehow smaller than or different from what your interior most essentially is, through the sustained exercise of making peace with what should not have been made peace with, of finding the way to function inside what should have been left, of developing the particular flexibility of someone who has been learning to bend so long they have almost forgotten what it felt like to stand straight. This version of you is not the real you. You knew this. You knew it in the specific way that people know things they cannot afford to act on, as a background awareness. A low frequency of recognition that coexisted with everything else you were doing without ever quite becoming the foreground. The adapted version worked. The adapted version got things done and maintained relationships and navigated the circumstances that the real version would have found impossible to navigate without changing everything. But the adapted version was never going to be able to live the life that the real version was built for, was never going to be able to receive what was meant for the real version, was never going to be able to occupy, with any completeness or any permanence, the space in the world that your actual life requires. The pain removed it. Not quickly, nothing that is deeply installed removes quickly, but completely. Over the years of sustained difficulty, the adapted version was steadily, progressively, sometimes painfully dismantled. The flexibility that had felt like resilience revealed itself as a form of self-abandonment and was released. The tolerance that had felt like strength revealed itself as a form of contracted expectation and was released. The smallness that had felt like humility revealed itself as a form of compliance with conditions that were designed to keep you small and was released. Each release hurt in the way that the removal of something installed deeply always hurts. Each release felt, in the moment of its happening, like loss rather than liberation. Each release was in fact liberation in the specific form that liberation most often takes, indistinguishable from loss until enough time passes to see what was liberated into. You are now living in what was liberated. The real version of you, the one that the adapted version was built on top of and that was preserved underneath the adaptation through all the years it was operating, is now the primary occupant of your life. The one that was always there, that the pain was always trying to reach and restore and free from the layers that had been built over it. The one that God was always looking at when God looked at you. That the pain was always serving even when the service was invisible from where you were standing inside it. There is a particular thing that happens in the body when a sustained pain ends. It is not immediately recognizable as the end of the pain. It is recognizable first as an unfamiliar quality of quiet, a stillness in a place that had been continuously occupied by something that is now absent. The absence is not yet readable as good. It is readable first simply as different, as the novel experience of a space that has been cleared of something that was filling it, which feels strange before it feels free. Before the freedom, there is the strangeness of the clearing. You have been in this strangeness, maybe for days, maybe for weeks, the particular disorientation of a person whose nervous system was calibrated to manage pain that is no longer there, that keeps bracing for what does not arrive, that keeps allocating resources to the management of something that no longer requires management, that keeps moving in the patterns that the pain required and finding, each time it moves that way, that the thing it was moving in response to is gone. This disorientation is not a problem. It is the recalibration. It is the nervous system discovering, through repeated encounters with the absence, that the absence is real and permanent and that the patterns organized around the presence of the pain can begin to reorganize around its absence. The reorganization is already happening. Things in your life that were arranged around the management of the pain, the relationships that existed primarily as the infrastructure of your coping, the habits that were primarily strategies for enduring, the entire orientation of your daily existence toward getting through rather than moving toward. These things are beginning to shift in response to the shift in what they were organized around. Some of this shifting is visible and some is happening at a level you will not see the effects of until later. But it is all happening. And it is all moving in the same direction. And the direction is toward the life that was always waiting on the other side of the pain's completion. Subscribe to this channel now if what you are reading is giving shape to something that has been happening in you without a name. Because this is a space where what God is doing in you is named clearly and treated with the seriousness it deserves. Where the interior movements of a life being transformed are recognized and honored and not reduced to the smaller explanations that most environments offer for what you are experiencing. Stay inside this. What is moving in you is significant. The ending of the pain is not the same as the beginning of ease. This distinction matters and it needs to be held carefully, because the conflation of the two produces a particular disappointment that can make the ending feel like something less than what it is. The pain is over. What comes next is not a painless existence. The world does not become painless when God ends a specific pain. What comes next is a different quality of life. A life oriented toward what you actually are rather than organized around surviving what was pressing against it. That different quality of life will contain its own difficulties. There will be new challenges and new pressures and new moments of uncertainty. The difference is that they will be the difficulties of a life that is genuinely yours rather than the difficulties of a life organized around the management of something that was not supposed to be there. The difference between those two kinds of difficulty is the difference between the effort of a person climbing towards something real and the effort of a person carrying a weight that was never theirs. Both are effort. One is effort in the direction of your actual life and one is effort in service of the thing that was pressing against it. You are now climbing. The weight is gone. The climbing itself has its challenges, but they are the right challenges. They are the challenges that produce growth in the direction you were always meant to grow, that require from you the capacities you were actually built to exercise, that call on what is most genuinely yours rather than on the adapted resourcefulness of the version of you that was managing what should not have been managed. The pain ended so that the climbing could begin. So that the energy that was being consumed by the management of what was pressing against your life could be redirected toward the actual living of it. So that the interior resources that were organized around survival could reorganize around creation. So that the version of you that was built to endure could step back and the version of you that was built to live could step forward. That stepping forward is what you are in the middle of right now. Even if it does not feel like stepping forward yet, even if it still feels primarily like the strangeness of the absence, the unfamiliarity of the quiet, the disorientation of a nervous system still recalibrating, that is what is happening. You are stepping forward into a life whose dimensions are larger than the life you were living inside the pain, larger in the specific ways that matter, larger in its capacity to hold what you actually are, larger in what it is going to ask of you, larger in what it is going to return to you. Write 222 in the comments if you have been feeling, underneath the strangeness and the recalibration, something that feels like anticipation, a low frequency of something coming that you cannot name but that feels different from hope, less fragile than hope, more bodily than hope, more like a fact that has not yet fully arrived than like a wish that may or may not be answered. If you have been feeling that quality of knowing before knowing that your life is about to look different in some significant way that you cannot yet see clearly, write 222, because that feeling is accurate. And this is the moment for it to be acknowledged as accurate rather than managed down into something smaller and safer. What is coming has been prepared with the same thoroughness with which the pain was designed. The same intelligence that calibrated the pain to the exact dimensions of what needed to be removed has calibrated what follows the pain to the exact dimensions of what was built during it. The life that was being prepared while the pain was operating is the life whose arrival you can feel at the edges of what is visible to you right now. It has been assembled in the invisible, in the territory of what God does without announcing what is being done, with the particular patience and precision of something that was being built to last rather than to impress. The people who are coming into your life in this period, the ones who are appearing now, in this specific window of the ending and the beginning, some of them from unexpected directions, some of them arriving through sequences of events that feel too precisely timed to be coincidence, are part of the assembly. They are not random. Each one carries something that corresponds to something in you that the pain refined. Each encounter is a meeting between what you became through the difficulty and what was always waiting for what you became. The precision of these arrivals is the precision of something that was orchestrated, and the orchestration is the signature of what ended the pain and what is now beginning to deliver what the pain made room for. The resources that were being blocked from you, the material, the relational, the spiritual, the opportunities that kept almost arriving and then not quite landing, those blockages were part of the architecture of what needed to happen during the pain. The pain required a certain kind of constraint, required that the life you were building during it be built from what was genuinely available inside you rather than from what the external world was offering. Because what was genuinely available inside you was what needed to be built, and what was externally available would have made that interior building easier to avoid. The constraint was the condition of the building, and the building is now done. The constraint lifts when the building completes. The resources that were being held back begin to move. Not all at once. The timing of what arrives is as precisely calibrated as everything else that has been orchestrated, but in a sequence whose overall direction is unmistakable. The sequence has already begun. You have already felt the first movements of it, the early arrivals, the small signs that the direction of flow in your life has changed. What you have felt so far is the beginning of the sequence, not the fullness of it. The fullness is still coming. The fullness is what the pain was building toward, and the ending of the pain is the announcement that the fullness is now able to arrive. There is a question that lives underneath all of this and that needs to be answered directly, because leaving it unaddressed leaves a gap in the understanding that the gap has always occupied. The question is, why? Why the pain at all? Why this specific form and this specific duration and this specific quality of suffering for this specific person who did not deserve to suffer at this level and who asked the question why throughout the years of it and received, most of the time, the particular silence that feels like no answer. The silence was not absence. The silence was the working. When the thing that is making a life is operating, it is not narrating what it is doing. The greatest work happens in the most complete quiet. The years when you heard nothing, when the explanations you needed did not arrive and the confirmation you were looking for did not appear and the question of why remained open and heavy and unresolved. Those were not the years of God's absence from your situation. Those were the years of the most intensive presence. The years when the work was at its most active, the refinement at its most thorough, the building at its most precise. The quiet was the signature of the work's intensity. The why, held clearly and completely, is this: you were being prepared for something that required you to be exactly what you are right now. For a life that required the specific interior architecture that the pain built. For encounters and relationships and responsibilities and contributions that required the specific quality of presence that the pain refined. For the particular version of your gifts that only emerges from the kind of sustained difficulty you went through. Consider what was actually being built while the pain ran. Most people, when they look back at a period of sustained difficulty, see primarily what was lost: the time, the opportunities, the relationships, the version of their life that might have been. The loss is real. It deserves to be acknowledged and grieved in whatever measure it requires. But the loss is not the whole account. Running alongside every loss was a building, something being constructed in you that could not have been constructed in easier conditions. That required the specific heat and pressure of what you were going through to form into the shape it needed to be. Your capacity for stillness was built during the pain. The ability to sit inside a situation that is not resolving, inside a question that is not answering, inside a difficulty that is not producing visible progress, without collapsing toward whatever quick relief is available. That capacity was built through years of being given no choice but to develop it. The people who have it casually, who seem naturally patient and unrattled by uncertainty, have it as a temperament. What you have is something stronger than temperament. You have it as a trained and tested reality. You have proven it to yourself in conditions that prove things definitively. That capacity is now yours permanently. And it is the kind of thing that changes every subsequent encounter with difficulty from something that overwhelms into something that you move through. Your clarity was built during the pain. Clarity is not intelligence. You can be enormously intelligent and still be genuinely unclear about what matters and what does not, about what is real and what is performed, about which directions in a life lead toward the actual thing and which directions lead toward its convincing imitation. Clarity is the product of sustained encounter with what is real at the level of real that the pain operates at. At that level, the pretenses and the performances and the substitutes for what genuinely matters all fall away. What is left is what actually is. You have lived at that level for long enough that your clarity now operates automatically, you see, through surfaces with a speed and accuracy that people who have not been where you have been do not develop. This clarity is not comfortable for everyone around you. It is enormously useful for the people who need what you are going to give. Your compassion was built during the pain in a form that most people do not develop. The compassion that comes from having been through something and having arrived on the other side is qualitatively different from the compassion that comes from empathy and sensitivity alone. Empathy reaches toward what another person is experiencing. The compassion of the returned traveler knows what they are experiencing, knows it from the inside, knows what it costs and what it requires and what helps and what does not. This quality of compassion, which you now carry in full, which was forged in the years of your difficulty with a precision that no shorter or easier route could have produced, is among the rarest things one human being can offer another. And God ended your pain at the exact point when this compassion had reached its full development, when there was nothing more for the pain to add to it. when keeping the pain running would have begun to cost the compassion something rather than adding to it. The why, held clearly and completely, is this: you were being prepared for something that required you to be exactly what you are right now, for encounters and relationships and contributions that required the specific quality of presence that the pain refined, for the people whose lives will change because of what you carry, who need what you now carry in the specific form the pain gave it, who would not have been reached by the version of you that existed before the pain began. This is not a small thing being said. The lives that are going to change because of what you carry are real lives. The people who needed you to go through what you went through in order to have access to what you became through it are real people. The contribution that is coming from you into the world, the thing you will give, the way your presence will alter the spaces you move through, the particular quality of understanding and recognition and genuine seeing that you will offer to people who have been in the territory of the unacknowledged. This is the answer to why. This is what the pain was building. This is what God was working toward when God was working through the difficulty of your years. You went through it so that you would know, from the inside of the experience rather than from any external understanding of it, what the people you are here to serve are going through, so that when you are in the presence of someone who is in the middle of a pain like the one you were in, you will not offer them the comfort of someone who has read about that territory. You will offer them the presence of someone who has lived in it, who knows what it sounds like in the quiet of the night when the why has no answer. Who knows what it costs to keep going when keeping going requires that you do it without knowing why keeping going is worth the cost? Who knows, from having been there, that the answer eventually comes, that God eventually ends it, that the work is real and the building is real and the completion is real? That knowing is the gift, rare and unmanufacturable and not acquirable through any path other than the one you took. The kind of knowing that changes people when they encounter it in you, that produces in them the specific relief of being in the presence of someone who genuinely understands, which is different from every other comfort in the world because it does not require the person who is hurting to explain themselves or to translate their experience into language that someone else can follow. You simply know, and the knowing communicates itself, before any words, in the quality of your attention and the texture of your presence and the specific way you hold what people bring you. God ended your pain and gave you, in the ending, the most powerful thing one human being can give to another, the presence of someone who has been where you have been and who knows, from having arrived on the other side of it, that the other side is real. Here is what the other side looks like in the texture of your actual daily life, because it is important to hold it concretely rather than only in the large and abstract terms that it is easy to hold spiritual transformation in. The large terms are true, but they do not help you navigate the morning. The concrete helps you navigate the morning. The other side looks like waking up without the weight being the first thing you feel. Like moving through your day without the background radiation of the pain, consuming a portion of everything that could otherwise be directed towards something alive. Like making decisions from what you actually want rather than from what the management of the pain requires. Like being in conversations with people and being fully present in those conversations rather than partially present because a portion of your attention is always occupied by the thing that has been hurting. It looks like your body beginning to recover. The pain lived in your body as well as your mind, in the specific holding patterns of a body that has been braced against something for a long time. In the places where tension became chronic because the tension was the appropriate response to a sustained threat. In the quality of your sleep and your digestion and the ease of your breathing and the thousands of small physical expressions of a system that has been in a state of ongoing management of something difficult. Those patterns are releasing. The body is recalibrating in the same direction that the interior is recalibrating. The physical recovery is happening alongside the interior recovery. And both are happening in the same quiet way that things happen when they are real rather than performed, gradually and steadily, and in the direction of what is genuinely better rather than in the direction of what would be dramatic. It looks like things beginning to work in a way that things have not been working. Practical things. The specific category of things that the pain's interference was most directly affecting: the financial, the relational, the creative, the professional. Whatever the specific territory of your life that the pain was most comprehensively disrupting, those disruptions are resolving. The resolution is not instant and it does not always look the way you expect resolution to look. But the direction has changed. The current that was running against you has turned. The things that were being withheld are beginning to move toward you. The people who were being kept at a distance are beginning to arrive. The opportunities that were forming and then dissolving are beginning to form and hold their form. This is the world responding to the end of what was creating the friction. The world was never the source of the friction. The world was the territory through which the friction was expressing itself. The friction is gone. The world is the same world, but without the friction, what you move through it toward is different. And how you are received when you arrive is different. And what you are able to give and receive in the encounters that make up a life is different. All of it different in the direction of more, of larger, of the dimensions of what was always meant to be yours rather than the reduced dimensions of what was available while the pain was operating. The people who were part of the pain are not all in your life anymore. Some left before the ending and some left as part of the ending, and some will leave in the weeks that follow as the reorganization of your life continues to clarify who belongs in what the pain was building toward and who belonged in what the pain was dismantling. All of this leaving has a logic to it that is not always comfortable to acknowledge, because the logic requires accepting that some of the people who were most present during the painful years were present as part of what needed to happen during those years, not as permanent companions for the life that follows but as participants in the particular chapter that is now closed. This is not an indictment of those people. Most of them were doing what they knew how to do with what they had to work with, which is what all of us do most of the time. But the life that is forming on the other side of the ending has different requirements than the life that was forming inside it. The relationships that the new life requires are relationships between people who carry a certain quality of interior, people who have done some version of the work that you have done, who have been through some version of the fire that you have been through, who know from the inside what it takes to arrive at the other side of sustained difficulty, and who therefore meet you where you actually are rather than where you used to be. Those relationships are already beginning to form. The people are already beginning to appear. You will recognize them by a specific feeling, not the feeling of comfort, though comfort will come, eventually, as the recognition deepens into familiarity. First there will be the feeling of ease, the specific quality of ease that comes from not having to manage yourself to fit what someone else needs, of being able to be the full version of what you are without monitoring how the full version is landing, of having a conversation that does not require you to navigate the gap between what you are actually thinking and what is safe to say, the ease of being genuinely met, which is different from every other form of social comfort, and which, once you have felt it after a long period of its absence, is unmistakable. These people are your people in the specific sense that matters most. They are part of what God assembled during the years when you were in the pain, assembled on the other side of it, waiting for the clearing that would allow them to arrive. Each one carries something that corresponds to something in you, something that the pain built that is now ready to encounter its counterpart in another person who is also being built, in their own life and their own difficulty, toward exactly this meeting. The arriving is not coincidental. The timing is not random. You are all part of the same assembly, approaching the same convergence from different directions. And the convergence is now close enough that you can feel each other arriving before the arrivals have fully landed. What you build with these people, the relationships, the collaborations, the mutual recognition and the shared work and the particular quality of community that forms between people who have all been through something real, this is part of what the pain was for, part of what God was building toward, the infrastructure of your actual life, the people inside whom what you carry will find its fullest and most alive expression, the ones who will receive what you give with the specific quality of reception that makes giving fully safe. The ones who will give you what you have needed in a way that the years of pain made it impossible to have and that the ending of the pain has made it finally possible to receive. The people who were part of the pain are not all in your life anymore. Some of them left, removed themselves, or were removed, in the specific way that the things which no longer serve the life being built always leave when the building reaches a certain point. The leaving was painful in most cases. The leaving felt like loss in the moment of its happening, and the grief of it was real, and there is no need to minimize the realness of that grief in order to see the leaving clearly now. The grief was appropriate. The leaving was also the ending of something that could not have remained and allowed the other side to begin. God ends pain completely. This is different from the way that pain usually ends in a human life, which is partially, gradually, with edges and remnants and the persistent sense that the old thing could reassert itself if circumstances aligned. What God ends is ended, not suppressed, not managed into a state of remission, ended at its source. And what ends at its source takes with it everything that was organized around its presence, the relationships, the patterns, the dynamics, the versions of yourself that were built to survive inside it. The clearing can feel like devastation when it is happening. The end of what was painful carries with it the end of what was comfortable within the pain, the familiar, even when the familiar was also the difficult. And the moment of having lost both the pain and the comfort of the familiar can be the loneliest moment in the whole arc of what happened. Can feel like a level of emptiness that makes the pain look preferable in some moments, because at least the pain was known and the known is navigable in ways that the unknown is not. You may have been in that moment, may still be in the edges of it. The clearing is real, the emptiness before the filling is real, and God who ended the pain is the same God who is filling what was cleared. The filling is the next movement. The filling is what you are beginning to feel at the edges of what is visible to you now. The people, the resources, the opportunities, the version of your life that was always waiting for the clearing to be complete enough to arrive. It is arriving. Write your name in the comments, right now, as an act of claiming this, as an act of placing yourself in the record of the people who received what this delivered and who chose to accept it fully. Without qualification, without the practiced smallness of someone who is still uncertain whether they deserve what God has ended and what God is now beginning. You deserve it. The pain is the proof of it, the proof that you were considered worth the work, worth the refinement, worth the sustained and precise and intelligent attention of the force that built you toward what you are becoming. Your name in the comments, now. Because this is your moment and moments are made real by being claimed. The click at the end of this is not a formality, it is a continuation. What is being talked about here is a process that is still happening in you. And the next video in this series carries the piece about what the other side of the ending actually produces in a life, specifically. The specific changes in who is drawn to you and what becomes available to you and what you find yourself capable of that you were not capable of before. When the clearing is complete enough for the filling to begin in earnest, that piece is the map for where you are now. Click on what appears on your screen and stay inside what God is doing. It does not stop here. It has barely begun.